Hey guys, my name is Miss Green and I am a fourth grade teacher at Uplift Meridian in Fort Worth. And I'm super excited to be getting to do the close reading lessons with you guys this week. So they will be happening Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we'll do one a day. Make sure you guys are telling your teachers all of the great things you're learning. Now, at this point in the school year, you guys would be taking your STAR test and showing all of us how hard you worked on close reading mastery all year. So since you're reading masters, there's not a whole lot left for you to do except practice those skills, hone in those skills, and bring them to fifth grade. So at this point, I'm getting you fifth grade ready, and we're going to show off to your teachers that you already know it all. So let me go back one more. We are on lesson 7, which is going to be pages 117 through 120 in the packets that were sent home to you guys. And we're going to be reading Excerpt from Matilda. One thing that we have to understand when we are getting started today is that what an excerpt is. So when I am a reader and I get to the STAR test or I get to any passage and it says excerpt from anything, I know that an excerpt is a short section taken from a play, a film, or written work. So that means what we're about to read today is not the whole story. What you see on the right is the actual book that you're reading from, and that's Matilda by Roald Dahl. So today you're probably going to read 2 pages worth, not even a whole chapter. And so that word excerpt tells us that we won't get the whole picture of the entire story. We might not see that normal thinking job of character, problem, solution, lesson learned. We only get a snippet of this story. So my challenge to you today is to be thinking about who is Matilda and what can I learn just from these couple pages about this character. And maybe you guys will want to pick up the book to read it later. So at Meridian, we use what we call character inference wheel. If you guys have seen this before, that's awesome. It kind of helps us narrow in our thinking from something more specific and strategic as readers than just what did the character learn? What is the setting? We walk through character motivation, character perspective, character relationships, character traits, and character feelings. 5 things that show us the character is truly the person or animal sometimes that is driving the story. If we can figure out what the character is motivated by, and in this case, our character is a strong reader, we'll be able to figure out the rest of the story. So if this is new to you, go ahead and pause that YouTube video here, check it out, dive into each section, and think those outer bubbles on this anchor chart are our thoughts, what we as readers are thinking about to understand what that inner circle is. So I'll kind of refer back to some of the things such as perspective, feelings, motivation today. We might not hit all of them, but throughout the week we'll talk about them more. So we are going to go ahead and dive straight in and start previewing our text. That was kind of a little hint as to what we'll talk about. We'll pop back to the PowerPoint clearly on the next slide to dive into a certain vocab word that we are also going to focus on today. So I'm going to make the shift over to my DocCam where you see the passage. All right, so all good readers, we are going to write all over our pages. I know you guys have done this in close reading in your classrooms and throughout learning at home. And so we're going to read the passage and then we're going to mostly focus on our attack strategies on how to answer the questions. Because like I said, this would normally be a testing season. And while you guys don't have it right now, we want to make sure that you're ready for everything that is going to hit you next year. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to start with our pre-read today from the picture that I showed you, and knowing that this is an excerpt from a story by Roald Dahl, I'm going to write my genre here, which is fiction. Now I'm going to back away from our normal thinking jobs of fiction, like I said before, and we're not going to be focusing on character, problem, solution, lesson learned. We're going to be starting with our character, Matilda, and we're going to see what can I learn about her through this story, and maybe you will see some of those other pieces fall into place. So what we did before, but I'll catch you up on, is this word excerpt tells us, oops, let it focus, that we are just going to be reading part of the story, okay? This is a part of a story. With our main character focused on Matilda. you'll see that I will end up reading through a lot of it and not stopping too many times because I think this will be a fairly easy read for you guys. So, focusing on the character inference wheel, you can either print it from the slide before or just listen to what I've been saying. We're going to get started. This story, let's go, okay? Where are the children's books, please? Matilda asked. They're over there, on those lower shelves, Mrs. Phelps told her. Would you like me to help you find a nice one with lots of pictures in it? So I'm going to stop here. I'm just going to underline lots of pictures in it. What do we know about Matilda so far? Not much. I know that she's maybe at a library or in her classroom, but I do know that Mrs. Phelps is saying, do you want a book with lots of pictures? Okay, so she's looking for children's books. That is her CM, her character motivation. She's motivated by reading right now. And she wants a book with lots of pictures in it. So I'm asking myself, like good readers do, I'm going to say, is she really young? Because when I think about the kinds of people or the ages of people that read books with pictures in them, they're going to be those of us, if you have little brothers and sisters, that's when you see a lot of the pictures. As you get older, they turn into chapter books and lots of words. Let's keep going. No, thank you, Matilda said. I'm sure I can manage. From then on, every afternoon, as soon as her mother had left for bingo, Matilda would toddle down to the library. Toddle was a new word for us fourth graders in this read. Now, toddle looks a lot like the word toddler. So I looked it up for you guys in the dictionary, and I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you. But to toddle is, and you can go ahead and copy here, it is a young child's unsteady walk. So quite like a toddler learning how to walk, if someone toddles, they're kind of, and it kind of looks like they're wobbling around, right? So I'll reread that, and I want you to picture her. We know she's maybe young because she wants it, or the Mrs. Phelps thinks that she wants a picture book, and let's see how she walks now. From then on, every afternoon, as soon as her mother had left for bingo, Matilda would toddle down to the library. The walk only took 10 minutes, and this allowed her 2 glorious hours sitting quietly by herself in a cozy corner, devouring one book after another. I'm going to underline that phrase, devouring one book after another. So right here, I see the authors using figurative language to help paint a picture for us readers. So I'm going to bounce back over to the PowerPoint, and we're going to learn a quick word together. And that word is devouring. So the way the author uses this, and how I know it's figurative, is because the word devouring, when in the literal sense, is like this man right here. He's destroying this hamburger, right? Think about it. You've been hungry for days and you're just shoving it in your face. Right? The minute we get out of quarantine, when you pick that first food you want, you're just going to devour it. So that means eat it really fast. Just consume it. So if we were to literally put that definition in this story, it says that she was devouring one book after another. Now, good old friend Google helped me out. That would look like this monster here. I can assume that she is not literally eating all the books in the library. So the reason it's important as readers to understand that, literal versus figurative, is literally would be she's eating all the books, and figurative, if I move my little guy over, is like this woman right here. She is trying to read and soak up as many books as possible. And hopefully that'll be like what your learning is like when you get back. You're going to devour it all. So she's not literally eating. She's just really excited about what she's reading. All right, back to the story. Okay. When she had read every single children's book in the place, she started wandering around in search of something else. Let me move. Okay. I know right now, and I'm going to write it under where fiction is, that this is told in third person. So we get a unique view as the reader of the narrator's perspective. It's not Mrs. Phelps. It's not Matilda. This is an outside view of the story going on. Mrs. Phelps, who had been watching her with fascination for the past few weeks, now got up from her desk and went over to her. "Can I help you, Matilda?" she asked. "I'm wondering what to read next," Matilda said. "I've finished all of my children's books." "You mean you've looked at the pictures?" "Yes, but I've read the books as well." Mrs. Phelps looked down at Matilda from her great height, and Matilda looked right back up at her. Sorry about that. So what I notice here is, since we don't know much about Matilda yet, I do point out from her great height. She looked down at Matilda from her great height. So really quickly in my head, I'm imagining someone very tall and someone very small. So it could be a height difference, but from what we read earlier about picture books, from what we read about her toddling or wobbling down the street, combined with this, is I can assume that Matilda is not only very small, so I'm putting M is very small, but she might be very young. Okay, let's continue. I thought some were very poor, Matilda said, but others were lovely. So even if she's young, she's very well spoken. I liked the secret garden best of all. It was full of mystery. The mystery of the room behind the closed door, and the mystery of the garden behind the big wall. Mrs. Phelps was stunned. That word stunned, she's shocked, right? And I know that because she's listening to this young child talk about books she's read that Miss Green and probably many of your teachers and parents didn't have to read till middle school, high school. She says, exactly how old are you, Matilda? So we know she's already stunned, and she says, how old are you? 4 years and 3 months. First of all, that is very young. Mrs. Phelps was more stunned than ever. We see repetition. So if we see the author is repeating the word stunned, he wants you to truly understand that Mrs. Phelps is shocked. But she had no... Let's rewind. Mrs. Phelps was more stunned than ever, but she had the sense not to show it. What sort of book would you like to read next? She asked. Oops. Do not certainly need to zoom in that much. Okay, let's flip the page. You guys are doing great. Matilda said, I would like a really good one that grown-ups read. A famous one. I don't know any names. So again, we go back to this character motivation. Okay, CM, that's from our chart that I showed you. And she is motivated to read something beyond her years. Mrs. Phelps looked along the shelves, taking her time. She didn't quite know what to bring out. How, she asked herself, does one choose a famous grown-up book for a 4-year-old girl? I'm going to underline that. How, she asked herself, does one choose a famous book for a 4-year-old girl? And this right here is internal dialogue. For those of you who had the opportunity to read Out of My Mind, our character Melody also used internal dialogue to show the reader how she was feeling and what was going through her head. So we just got a zoomed in view of why she's so shocked. So she's sitting there and she's like, how do I find a book for adults for a 4-year-old? Her first thought was to pick up a young teenager's romance, the kind that is written for 15-year-old schoolgirls, but for some reason she found herself instinctively walking past that particular shelf. Try this, she said at last. It's very famous and very good. If it's too long for you, just let me know, and I'll find something shorter and a bit easier. Great Expectations, Matilda read, by Charles Dickens. I'd love to try it. So, great readers, right now, I'm just going to take a pause. Great readers think about what they're reading as they're going. And as a reader, I'm right now shocked that as a 4-year-old, she was even able to read the word expectations, let alone a high school level book. Okay, so let that challenge you guys when you're trying to meet your BAS reading levels, that Matilda, this 4-year-old, was reading what high schoolers were reading. So I must be mad, Mrs. Phelps told herself. But to Matilda, so again, that's that internal dialogue. I'll just write ID this time to let us know what she's thinking. There we go. Of course you may try it. Over the next few afternoons, Mrs. Phelps could hardly take her eyes from the small girl sitting for hour after hour in the big armchair at the far end of the room with the book on her lap. So that really made me think. And what I want you guys to do is I want you to actually close your eyes right now. I'm going to read you this paragraph, and I want you to visualize what this scene looks like because the author is very strategic in the words he uses to help you as a reader experience this story. So everyone go ahead and close your eyes, and I'm going to read this last paragraph to you. Over the next few afternoons, Mrs. Phelps could hardly take her eyes from the small girl sitting for hour after hour in the big armchair at the far end of the room with the book on her lap. It was necessary to rest it on her lap because it was too heavy for her to hold it up, which meant she had to sit leaning forward in order to read. And a strange sight it was, this tiny, dark-haired person sitting there with her feet nowhere near touching the floor, totally absorbed in the wonderful adventures of Pip and old Miss Havisham and her cobwebbed house, and by the spell of magic that Dickens, the great storyteller, had woven with his words. The only movement from the reader was the lifting of the hand every now and then to turn over a page. And Mrs. Phelps always felt sad when the time came for her to cross the floor and say, "It's 10 to 5, Matilda." Go ahead and open your eyes. So before we dive into the whole paragraph, it's 10 to 5, Matilda. I can infer, as a good reader, that she's been sitting there for a while, and Mrs. Phelps always feels sad, so we have this character feeling. She feels sad when she has to tell her it's 10 to 5. You were in a class, I would ask you, hey, scholars, why do you guys think that? But today, I'll go ahead and tell you that if we're going to infer, that it means it's probably time for her to go home. All right. Now this paragraph, we just saw this librarian or teacher just watch this 4-year-old read and read and read. I felt a lot of focus from this imagery. So if you're focused, we wanted you guys to close your eyes and imagine what was going on. So from that imagery, I see a lot of focus from our small child here, Matilda. And what I also see in this first sentence, where it says that she could barely take her eyes off the girl. I wrote when I first read this, I wrote that she was in awe of her. When I imagine watching one of you guys read for hours, I would just be very excited and in awe that you guys were so into your books, and then wonder what you guys were also reading. So we've obviously finished, but I don't want to miss this picture. I think the author chose this picture for a reason, and it confirms what we thought about her age. It reminded me of on the first page, in paragraph 9 here, or section 9, I'll circle it for you guys here. I did the little paragraph symbol like that, and a 9, where it said, from her great height. This is when we talked about her towering down on her and looking down at Matilda from her great height. So normally when you would finish reading a fiction story, you would write the lesson learned from the character. I would argue here that since it's an excerpt or just a part of Matilda, we don't actually get the full picture of who this character is. So I asked myself, what have I learned about the main character and her interactions with the librarian? So if you're watching from home, which is all of you, I want you to go ahead and write right on the side here. I want you to answer that question. What do I know? Now don't copy this question. I want you to answer it. So what do I know about Matilda? And then secondly, what did you learn about her interactions with the librarian? So then mention her interactions with the librarian. This is going to help us attack our questions. So I'm not going to pause, but if you're at home, I want you to go ahead and take a pause. Take about a minute. You can either go take a minute to go take a break and take a minute right now to answer these questions to help you guys as good readers attack these next questions. All right, I'll hope that you guys all took your minute break. And we will go to the questions. Now, you don't want to get rid of your passage because your passage is going to be where you find all your answers. Now, at Meridian, I am so proud of my scholars. They are so great at attacking their questions. For a while, we didn't understand the reason why, but then we all became masters, and we get it now. So we use this thing called Passage Reading Mastery Plan of Attack. So we've already tackled the text. These are all 3 things that you've done. You didn't even realize that I was coaching you through. The next 3 things are about tackling the question. So the first thing we're going to do is read and interpret the question. Then we're going to answer the question by coming up with a claim and support evidence. So it means I'm going to cover all the answers. I'm going to come up with my own answer, and I'm going to write it on there. And then third, we will reveal the answers, okay? And it'll be so much easier because there will 100% be an answer that matches yours if you found evidence from the text. So let's dive in. All right. The first question, I'm already messing it up, there we go, is read the sentence from paragraph 2 below. Would you like me to help you find a nice one with lots of pictures in it? So first thing I need to do is scroll down a little more. It says, what does this show about Mrs. Phelps? So I figure out what's the question asking me. The question wants me to say as a reader, what did we learn about Mrs. Phelps from this quote? Would you like me to help you find a nice one with lots of pictures? So we know that Mrs. Phelps, I think from the passage, thinks Melody would like picture books, right? She sees her as this tiny little girl and assumes, oh, because she's little, she wants these picture books. So now my next attack strategy is to reveal the question or answers, and I'm going to use my magic maybe or my for sure knows, my first read. She does not think that Matilda is artistic. Okay, well, nothing is said about being artistic, so we're going to get rid of letter A. She is proud of the books in her library. So I read this and I think maybe she is because she seems to understand her library, know where things are. So I'm actually going to put a magic maybe next to that one. She does not expect Matilda to be able to read. Okay, that's kind of connected to why if I didn't think you could read, I would probably hand you a picture book, right? So I'll put my magic maybe there. And she recommends only books that she likes. It's not true. We have no evidence that she only likes picture books. So now, looking back at my answer, I said, thinks Melody would like picture books. Okay, does that have anything to do with being proud? I don't really think so, but let's check the next one. She does not expect Matilda to be able to read. I think that's pretty much what we discussed all day, right? So I'm going to go with C as the answer. And you guys can go along with me. You're going to use these strategies on your own passages. Next one, number 2. The author's description in paragraph 19 that the only movement from the reader was the lifting of the hand mainly shows that. So we talked about that for a little bit. And we talked about how we think that that showed how focused she was and in the zone, right? She's not fiddling with pens. She's not playing with toys. She's not pulling out her phone and checking TikTok. It was only moving to flip the page. So we said it shows that Matilda was focused. Okay, let's see. So we're going to next attack strategy is to reveal the answers. Matilda is tired. Actually, maybe that's why she wasn't turning the pages, right? Maybe she just wasn't moving because she was sleepy. Matilda is concentrating hard. Ooh, that's a very great connection to what we said focused. She's not strong. Okay, there's no evidence as to how strong she is. Matilda is honest. Well, we didn't question whether or not she was lying or not. So I think very easily that one is B because your answer or our answer was that she was focused, and that's pretty much concentrating hard. Next one. Which sentence best shows that Matilda has captured the attention of the librarian? So this phrase, captured the attention, is if you imagine if your teacher went up to the front of the class and said, "Mer, mer, mer, mer," and you're probably going to start talking to your neighbors, not pay attention, maybe ask for the bathroom. But if your teacher got up front and was like, "Hey guys, I have a great story for you," they've captured your attention. So we're trying to figure out what caused the librarian to look at Matilda and just stare at her, right? For hours as she read. Let's go ahead. We have to reveal all the answers on this one because this one's looking for text evidence. So, which one shows that she captured the attention of the librarian? They're over there on those lower shelves, Mrs. Phelps told her. Would you like me to help you find a nice one with lots of pictures in it? Okay, she's paying attention to Matilda. So she's captured. Mrs. Phelps looked along the shelves, taking her time. She didn't quite know what to bring out. It has nothing to do with Matilda and Mrs. Phelps. I must be mad, Mrs. Phelps told herself, but to Matilda she said, of course you may try it. Again, doesn't really show that relationship side of the capturing her attention. Always go back to the question. Over the next few afternoons, Mrs. Phelps could hardly take her eyes from the small girl sitting in for hour after hour in a big armchair. So I think the phrase that gives this one away is could hardly take her eyes from. That means she's literally staring at her, just watching her. She doesn't want to be distracted. That's exactly what captured the attention is. You guys are rocking it. 3 more questions. Don't look at the answers yet. We got to use our attack strategies. You can pause this video and see if maybe you're getting the same answers as me and use those strategies and then check it with what I do. So, number 4. The illustration best supports the information found in. Now, Ms. Green pretty much gave you guys this one, but I think it's a connection that all of you could have made. When you go back, we noted already that in paragraph 9, right, the image that it's referring to is this one right here, where she was towering from a great height on top of her. So if you guys were in a classroom setting, we'll focus. If you were in a classroom setting, I know that all Uplift 4th graders would have been able to figure that out very easily. So that's one of those STAR test questions that you say, thank you very much. Moving on, give me something harder. All right, next one. Which phrase from the passage best highlights that Matilda is only 4 years old? So we're looking for where best highlights that Matilda is only 4 years old. We're going to look for something that connects with her age. So again, we have to reveal these. We can't come up with our own. So, A, I'm sure I can manage. So that doesn't have anything to do with her age. Toddle down to the library. Now, if you guys remember that word toddle, we think toddler, we think wobble. Keep going. So that's my magic maybe. That seems really obvious to me. Started wandering around. Okay, I think if someone was young, they would probably wander, right? You wouldn't really know where you would go in a library if you were 4. I don't know any names. Don't really know if that has anything to do with age, unless you use that in context. She was talking about not knowing the names of books. But I think the biggest thing that highlights that she is 4 years old is that she's toddling down to the library. She's wobbling. She's kind of falling around. B. Number 6. Okay. Read the sentence from the paragraph below. And a strange sight it was, this tiny dark-haired person sitting there with her feet nowhere near touching the floor, totally absorbed in the wonderful adventures of Pip and old Miss Havisham and her cobwebbed house, and by the spell of magic that Dickens, the great storyteller, woven with his words. What is the meaning of the word absorbed as it's used in the sentence? So I got to go back and find that word absorbed. And again, I had you guys imagine this paragraph in your head. So let's think I'm going to use a different strategy today. So this is another test taking strategy. So I actually want you to reveal this. And your strategy today is to plug it in. This is when you don't have access to the dictionary or you're trying to check your work to make sure the definition that you chose is correct. So very interested. If I thought it was A, I would go back. So it says, let's start here. She's sitting there with her feet nowhere near touching the floor, totally very interested in the wonderful adventures of Pip and old Miss Hay. Yeah, I think that could work. But I'm going to put my magic maybe and test the other ones, right? We know that she was interested in what she was reading. Next. Sitting there with her feet nowhere near touching the floor, totally confused in the world. No, she was confused. She would either get up and ask a question. She would probably choose a new book, right? She'd be flipping through the pages more. So I know she's not confused. So that kind of will help us fly through these next couple answers. Totally emptied in the world of adventures. What is being emptied? I don't think that matches the sentence at all. Totally emptied in the wonderful adventures of Pip and Old. She's not emptied of anything. And we'll keep going and we'll rewind one more time. Sitting there with her feet nowhere near touching the floor, totally half listening in the wonderful adventures. Now we know that's not true because she is reading. You know what's funny, guys, is when I look at these vocab questions, and we just flew through that really quick to determine it was A, that's pretty much what vocab is. If you can plug it back in, most of the other answers aren't going to make any sense at all. So as good readers, I want you guys to use that skill of just plugging it in, checking your work. Well, I am so glad you guys were able to join me in the reading today of an excerpt from Matilda. And as you guys come for the rest of the week, we're going to read 2 more passages and talk about what it looks like to be great readers, not just good readers, great readers who use attack strategies when they're looking at their passage and attack strategies when they're looking at their questions, and preparing yourselves for 5th grade. You guys are a few more weeks away. So thanks for joining, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Wednesday.